We're going to start with a triangle printed onto copy paper. You should use an equilateral triangle, so it doesn't matter which way your paper is turned. Inside one of your triangle's angles, or whatever you deem the top to be, draw any kind of line from one side to the other. You can also make shapes, like I'm making ovals here. You can really draw any kind of line, as long as it goes from one side of your triangle to the other. I'm making a pattern of bumpy lines, but you could make zigzag lines, curly lines, wavy lines, straight lines, whatever you think, as long as it goes from one side to the other. You want to think of some sort of pattern. That's why I repeated different shapes in between. I encourage you to be as detailed as you like, but just so you know, you will repeat your drawing several times. Flip over your paper. Because it's copy paper, you should be able to see the edges of your triangle. Take your pencil and hold it on its side. You want to rub the graphite onto the back of your triangle. It works much better if you hold your pencil sideways and not up and down as if you were to write, kind of like if you were shading. You can definitely go a little bit outside of your triangle, but don't go too far, because then you wind up wasting your time because you're not really going to use that part of your paper. Once you cover the back of your triangle with graphite, flip it over and set it aside. On a large piece of white 12 by 18 inch paper, please write your name and class code at the bottom left corner. We'll actually keep this part on the front today. Because there's a lot of empty space under my triangle, I'm actually going to cut it right here. The paper you have might already be cut already. This step is super important because the placement of your first triangle is going to affect all the other triangles that fit around it. Place your triangle at the very, very bottom of your paper and make sure it is as centered as possible. It doesn't have to be perfectly centered, but as centered as you possibly can. Now you're going to trace the outer shape of your triangle. Firmly hold the paper down and also press firmly with your pencil. You'll see why soon. After you've traced your triangle, trace on top of all your design lines inside your triangle. Again, press firm, but you might have to be a little bit gentle so you don't rip the paper quite yet. Now lift your paper up to reveal the transfer. As long as you had enough graphite on the back of your triangle and you firmly traced on top of every line and mark, all of your designs and details should have transferred. We want to make sure all other triangles line up perfectly. So let's carefully cut around our triangle. Add more graphite to the back of your triangle if needed. Now flip over your triangle and match it up right next to your first triangle. Make sure your designs match up too. You can trace directly on the triangle to get the triangular shape or trace the outside. Again, trace on top and follow your design lines inside your triangle. Oops, don't forget the bottom of your triangle. If you do, simply match it up, put it back, and trace again. You're going to continue the same pattern of adding more graphite if needed, flipping over your triangular piece, matching the point up to the center, and tracing over everything. Trace a triangular shape, trace all of your details inside. You want to really be sure you're not skipping any space. You really want the side of your triangle to match up with the other side of your previously drawn triangle. Notice how the start of our design is always pointing toward the center? This is called a radial design because our patterns and lines repeat around the center or the radius. Your final triangle slice should match perfectly, and all you need to do is draw the back of your triangle and your designs on the inside. Now you've successfully transferred your designs 6 times onto your paper. What shape did 6 triangles create? That's right, a hexagon. Using a black permanent marker, trace over all your good lines. Remember, it's a permanent marker, so even though the video is sped up, make sure you take your time and go slow. You also may want to match up your lines so they touch the lines inside the other triangle, making your design look like it's continuous. Use a large eraser to erase all of your pencil lines and smudges. Sometimes the graphite that we rubbed on the back of the triangle may have transferred onto your art. So that's why erasing is really important. It will make your art look brighter and clean it up. Now you need crayons in the rainbow colors. But first, let's label each triangle section. It doesn't matter where you start, because the hexagon is a radial design, it will go around and around, but you want to make sure you're labeling your design in order: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. I'm going to set my 6 crayons off to the side and first start with red. I want to make sure I'm coloring the slice that I labeled red with red. But here's how you can make your crayon coloring interesting. Try to do variations of pressure. See how I'm coloring as dark as I can in the middle here? I'm using firm pressure and multiple layers to make sure no white space of the paper is showing through. Now I'm going to change it up by coloring lightly. The pressure is not as firm, and I'm also not going over the same space as much. I'm using the exact same crayon, but I'm trying my best to make it look a little bit different. Continue coloring with variations of firm and light pressure. You can also try to have medium pressure to get a medium tone. I'm speeding up the video, but make sure you plan out where you want your light and firm pressure to make it look like dark, medium, and light versions of the same color. Now I'm going to move on to my next color in the color wheel, orange. I want my orange variations to match up with my red variations. So I'm going to color firm near the center and use light pressure on the spaces in between each of my details. But before we get to our next color, let's stretch out our hands. Your palm, wrists, and fingers might be hurting a little bit because we've been gripping our crayon so hard. So don't forget to give yourself a little stretching break. I'm coloring my third space with yellow. Since yellow is the lightest color in the color wheel, you have to really make sure you're pressing firm to get the darkest yellow you can possibly get. And you want to make sure you're using as light a pressure as you can in the spaces you want to look lighter, because otherwise there won't be much variation. To make coloring with green easier, I'm just going to rotate my hexagon. And I'm going to continue with my pattern of firm pressure and light pressure. I'm just going to rotate my art again so I can color with blue right next to green. Great job, you're almost done. We just have one more color in the color wheel to complete. Last and final color is violet. To make our artwork look final and complete, let's cut out the hexagon. Remember to cut around the outside of your shape and not up the lines. For the final complete step, Let's take out a 12 by 18 inch piece of black paper and glue our radial design hexagon. First, decide where is the top of your art and where is the bottom. Once you're ready, take out a bottle of liquid glue. Make sure to pick the stuffy nose, twist, 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 and gently squeeze to see if we can hear our bottle breathing. Flip over your artwork and squeeze long lines of glue in a hexagon shape, close but not too close to the edge of your paper. Set your glue aside and carefully flip it and stick it onto your black paper. Try your best to center your artwork to the black paper. With clean hands, gentle press to make sure it stays put. Using a white colored pencil, write your name and class code at the bottom front of your paper. Now you've created a hexagonal shaped radial color wheel.